Hello, everyone. Oh, all right. Here we are. Oh my goodness. I forgot to close the closet door. I was so prepared. There we go. That's much better. Hide the laundry. Hide your children. Hide the laundry. Oh, welcome. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal News Hour. Thank you so much for coming. Oh my. It has been a very long week. I decided to quit smoking and vaping this week. Um, One can debate whether that's a good idea, whether I picked the right time. Let me put off this air to do that. Um, but I think it's very necessary, and I'm going to walk you through why. And why. So, maybe this is a fun way to get into this. So, I was smoking since I was 16 years old. I When I was in college, the smoking age was 18. They raised it to 21 a couple years ago. But I started smoking when I was 16, and then went to college and smoked every day. And I was never a heavy smoker. I was 4 or 5 cigarettes a day, sort of thing. And then in 2013, I switched to vaping because that had come along. And until last night, I vaped something nicotine every day since about March of 2013. And part of the reason why I have not I've chosen sort of not um to continue with that has a great deal to do with uh what has happened with the election. And it's it's a lot. It's a lot um to deal with, to handle. I'm 99.9% sure I forgot to record this, but it's streaming, so it will exist. But I'm not recording a file, which would have been fun, but not essential. Um so let's recap from the beginning. So obviously, as you know, on Tuesday, and we knew it early, Donald Trump was announced as winner of the 2024 presidential election. The night of, let's just go through the week. So the night of, it seemed like it was a bit of a blowout, which I was kind of surprised about. So last week I was here, I'd done the news hour, and we had talked about the handful of news stories, and the election was going to be on Tuesday. We did a live stream. I started live streaming at 6 p.m. and live streamed until midnight. When I ended my stream at midnight, I pretty much knew it was over, and it was over by about 2:15 in the morning when I finally went to bed. Um, Going into it, I knew it could be close. I told people it's literally a dead toss up. It's a coin toss. There's no clear favorite. I think the part that was shocking early on Tuesday, Wednesday was it seemed like a blowout. I am still surprised that the Republicans have picked up both the Senate and quite possibly the House. As of right now, on November 11th, 2024, the Republicans have 2,014 House seats. There are 6 left to count. mostly in California. The Democrats would need, I think, 9 to catch up. The Republicans need 4. They will very slowly end up with House control. The Senate's already done. They flipped 4 seats, including Jon Tester in Montana, who's just a wonderful person and a great farmer and rancher and has held on to that seat for years and years and years. And I'm not surprised when you start to understand why people voted the way they did in this election, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, it seemed on Tuesday, Wednesday, it seemed like it was a blowout. Like, not only had the country voted for Donald Trump, they had overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. In the intervening time, Mr. Trump's vote lead has shrunk quite a bit. As it turns out, Kamala Harris did manage to achieve about 71 million votes. They had to finish counting Pennsylvania. They had to finish counting votes from California takes forever because the state's too big. They had to really count up a lot of votes. There was sort of briefly Thursday, Friday, this idea that there were somehow 15 million Democrat votes that had not been or not counted or whatever have you, to try to try to stoke some sort of very silly and misguided conspiracy. So that's kind of the situation. There's been a lot of refreshing of pages and maps. I've still been keeping an eye on the house. There has been a lot of conversations. I have been on the phone. I spent the Wednesday after on the phone. I woke up early. I spent the Wednesday after on the phone and most of Thursday on the phone. Friday I just had to get out of the house. But Wednesday I spent most of it on the phone. I will say I went through all the emotions. My heart dropped because I knew what another Trump presidency would mean. And in the last week, since we've been together, at a very personal level, I've had to get used to the fact that doing this job and writing the way I do and doing these lives and making these videos and all this type of thing, there's now you could die or be arrested, at a minimum arrested and put in prison, maximum killed, part of this job. Now, I am a student of history and I'm a student of journalism. This is not new. Journalists are all, in any sort of major right-wing authoritarian regime, the journalists and truth tellers are the first people to go. Right along with academics and educated people. Well, I'm all of those things in spade. So I've joked for years and years, we're the first to go. That day's now here. And I've had to mentally, physically, emotionally, and psychologically adjust to that reality. And I'll admit, I'm honestly one of the only people in my personal life that I think understands the gravity of what's about to happen. I've had a parade of people in my phone, mostly straight white men, to be honest with you, telling me everything's going to be fine. And I have no reason to worry. And my concerns are not based in any kind of reality. However, again, also a student of history. Unlike a lot of people, I take Trump and his cronies at what they say. At word one. I know that seems odd. Most Trump supporters I know do not believe a word that man says. And they'll tell you that much. Oh, he doesn't... That'll never happen. he doesn't actually mean that. Okay. Super cool. What if he does? Like, yeah, sure, but crazy idea. What if he does? Let's just put that out there. Okay. What then? And this is already, in my mind, already well in progress. In the last week, we've heard early versions of some of Trump's appointments. Stephen Miller is now deputy chief of staff. This guy Homan, who was announced today, he comes straight out of Project 2025. He was the author of the immigration portions, and he's already on the circuit talking about mass deportations. And obviously, I, like many other people, went through the hilarity of looking at the exit polling data and being like, oh wow, 49% of Latino men voted for, checks notes, the deporter in chief. Now, here's what I find kind of entertaining about all of this is Trump and co like to run on, oh, immigration is very important, the border is very important, the border is insecure, even though any immigration advocate will tell you that honestly the last president to get serious about deporting people was Obama. We recall the families in cages and detention center scandal of the late Obama years. Um, and under the Biden Harris regime, there have been 2.5 million people in the last 4 years deported and sent back. So when it comes to being tough on the border, honestly, you can do better than Democrats. To be very honest with you, because Trump didn't actually deport that many people. And when it comes to immigration, America has a Faustian bargain with immigration. People love the cheap labor. They don't necessarily love the cultural change that comes along with it. And ironically, being more open with guest workers on the border and having a more flexible immigration policy would actually stop the problem they're trying to solve, but instead it sort of keep them out. There's too many people here, the country's full, all the things that we hear. Another discussion for another day. Um I think I felt a lot of solidarity with my African American community who said, we're done. We did our job. Everyone was kind of worried about Trump's, influence in the black vote. And for black men, he didn't do poorly. 15%. I mean, that is on trend with everything that happened in 2020. And that's why the surprise wasn't surprising to me was in 2020 against Joe Biden, Trump increased his vote share in every demographic except white men. White men decided Donald Trump should not be president in 2020. And incidentally, it is white men who put him back in power. It was a combination of white men who voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And you've seen the graphs, and the memes and sort of thing. It was white men and Latino men who put Donald Trump back into power. And so, but honestly, his vote gains were on track with 2020. I had said 4 years ago, red alert, Donald Trump still increased his vote share across, he might have lost, but he increased vote share everywhere. Like, we have work to do. I love the black community on Twitter. I love Black Twitter. I love the people on TikTok, all this type of thing, because people really have kind of just been like, you know what? In despite of it all, we did our job. 88% of black women, 80% of black men, we did our job. We did what we could. Don't call us to save you when all this goes down. And we're going to focus on saving ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And incidentally, that mood has metastasized outward. into a lot of Harris voters. This has led to several families cutting off contact with each other, holiday plans canceled. There's a hilarious internet rumor of someone getting a divorce. Couple of those running around. Don't know if any of that's true, and it's funny to read and think about. Although I would hope that you wouldn't marry someone who thought a certain way, but people get married for different reasons. And it's incredibly entertaining how the thing MAGA people are most mad about is the fact that, honestly, we're not taking the bait this time. People have already been like, let's march, let's protest, and everyone's like, no. The country wanted this. This is what the country wanted. And I have to make a phone call this evening. There's one particular friend I've known for a very long time who I've been avoiding for the past week. And he's definitely unhappy that I will not give him any air. But tonight, I gotta give him a call. And just get through that conversation. And I know that there's millions of people all around the country who've had the same situation. A lot of people, unlike me, who doesn't necessarily always need to reduce contact with that, they are reducing contact, they're pulling away, they're setting boundaries, they're deciding not to deal with people who do not, vote for human rights and equality and a better society and all this type of thing, and are voting for, honestly, dark times ahead. And we're going to circle back to the dark times ahead. But, I've been avoiding him because he is one of these people, and I know a couple of them, who like to troll on the internet. Now, I'm going to say, in full disclosure, I have never understood trolling online. I sometimes like to speak in sarcasm. I sometimes like to call people out, but I have never intentionally started a flame war. I have never intentionally written something or said something that I just knew would piss off somebody because of their background or their view or whatever have you. But I know people that do this, and they do it for sport. They're the only ones laughing, of course. But I honestly don't understand that mentality. And it's funny because I was in conversation with someone and I said this, and she's like, it's usually, really insecure people that are into that sort of thing, and I'm like, I get that, but why does it need to ping off of me? Sort of thing. That does never made any sense. And I think it's because, like a lot of other people over the last 4 years, we thought we could engage, we could talk, we could, have this dialogue, bridge divides, all this type of thing. None of that mattered. In fact, I would say this is the election that the trolls won. This was the trolls' election because they're going to get their wish. Finally, they're going to get everything they want. Donald Trump controls it all. Supreme Court, Judiciary, Congress, White House. He's going to put in every single person in every single position only loyal to him, to follow a regressive, repressive, right-wing authoritarian program like Viktor Orban in Hungary, Erdogan in Turkey, and Putin in Russia. That's what's coming. And the trolls are going to get their wish. And they're going to... I think the reason why MAGA's unhappy with us socially right now is that we're not feeding them anymore. We're not feeding the trolls. We're not giving them our time, our attention, our tears, anything like that. We're not giving them that. We are no longer serving. The restaurant is closed. And they're starving. Because they don't thrive on getting what they want. They thrive on pissing off everybody else. They thrive on anger and deceit and vitriol. That's what keeps them alive. When that's no longer on offer, and that's what the left offers them, when that's no longer on offer, they wither. They don't have any air. They can't breathe. They can't eat. They can't anything. Because we are the ones that offered them that. And now as we're all being like, okay, that's what you wanted. Fine, great. Cool. We're done. We're going to let you go. And I've already have gotten yelled at by people on TikTok who said, how dare you condemn innocent people to die? How do you not care about people? And I said, this is what the people wanted. You can only help people so much so far. The old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We have spent the last 4 years on these topics, talking about these things. And people, a lot of people, almost 80 million people, 78 million people, walked into voting booths and said, yep, Trump. Trump Vance. And in many cases, in many states, voted for Democrats elsewhere. That's well, it's not funny because I understand split ticket voting, but people find it funny, because there was, like, for instance, in Arizona, Trump picks up Arizona from Kamala Harris, but Ruben Gallegos, the Democrat, beats Carrie Lake. And that gets into, I think, a lot of, odd things where there's this juxtaposition where this was not a policy election, it was a vibes election. And it was funny because when Kamala Harris came in August, people talked about this is the vibes election. And I'm kind of like, oh, that's great while the vibe is going in your direction. But when the vibe shifts, that cannot necessarily work into your favor. Lo and behold. There's also, I think what's very interesting is people, I think never really got a chance to know Kamala Harris because she had 100 days to introduce herself and Tim Walz to the nation, talk about policy, talk about all these things, figure all this stuff out, and also battle 4 years of misinformation coming out of Donald Trump. As I told someone this morning, here's what the left did not have in the last 4 years. It did not have someone whose 24/7 dedicated job was to run for president and fundraise all day, every day, for 4 long years. Kamala and Biden were busy being, the president and vice president of the United States. Big jobs, very busy, lots of time, lots of things to do. If you're actually into doing stuff. Which Trump is not. But if you're into doing things, lots of things to do. We did not have someone spending the last 4 years running for president. And never have I wanted to be more wrong, but when Biden dropped out in late July and Kamala Harris was put in, endorsed by him, which caused her to be put in, at the time I said you cannot swap out presidential candidates and win. And the DNC just shoved Biden out, and they might have just lost us the election. And for a minute, I'll admit, it was a toss-up. I thought, we might get away with this. This will be a first in American history. She would have been the third vice president to ever won election after president. She would have been the first person to literally have run a presidential campaign in 100 days and won. Unprecedented. Absolutely. 110%. Unprecedented. And unfortunately, for better or for worse, that did not happen. Donald Trump instead becomes the first president since Grover Cleveland to serve non-consecutive terms. The big issue with this election that I don't think I certainly did not appreciate enough. Saw it, didn't know I was seeing it. Is how much it was about identity politics. So I have a couple of friends, and I started asking around in the last couple days. Yeah, what's up? I had one friend talk about, everything's a race card. She was on with defund the police, and why does she go to different places and do accents? I'm like, it's called code switching, and he's like, it's just weird. She talks in accents. Like that's just so weird. It's not that America didn't like Democrats. America didn't like her. Let's just put that out there. I mean, and that gets into, I think, that indie politics thing of, in an election where people are like, no, we don't want woke, no, we're tired of identity politics, no, we're tired of trying to guilt white people and tampons in boys' bathrooms and all of these things, the Democratic Party, in its infinite wisdom, and Joe Biden, in his infinite wisdom, put up literally someone who represents everything Americans were voting against. Looking back at what people have said and the conversation of the last week and why people voted the way they voted, in my opinion, we were never going to win this. Ever. This race was lost 2 years ago. This race was lost at the end of the pandemic. This was done in 2022. The kind where they had the Republicans got back in the House. That was when the election was done. Absolutely, that's when the election was done. The other factor, and I talked about this at the time, besides identity politics, we may circle back to that idea, but the other factor at the time was also inflation, the economic story. Now, I think the identity politics and social angle is way bigger than inflation. I'll tell you why. In all the dialogue that's happened online and different things that I have read and videos that I have watched and all this type of thing, the identity politics stuff comes up way more often than inflation. Because early everyone was like, oh God, and all this type of thing. However, it has since come to light, inflation is a bit of a factor until it isn't. So globally, this year, there's been terrible inflation everywhere in the world. Most incumbent parties who've been responsible for the inflation, have been managing the inflation, have gotten voted out. It's been a bloodbath for incumbent parties pretty much everywhere because of the inflation. The price of stuff is too high. Prices have gone up. People are not happy. I remember one of the last calls I had with my friend who I'm avoiding, is he was like, yeah, he's like, the price of everything is too high. I can't survive. I have to vote for, I think I only survive. And I was like, okay, I get that. Um, and so I think that definitely was working against. We already knew when Joe Biden was trying to run on Bidenomics and how good the economy was in early 2024, that message was falling on deaf ears and no one wanted to hear it. I myself said, stop running on Bidenomics, no one wants to hear it. I think this was kind of a lost cause because the reality is the relief that happened from COVID caused inflation pretty much everywhere on the planet because you had a huge dip in demand, a huge increase in supply, and then a huge increase, well, not necessarily increase in supply, but you had dips in demand, dips in supply, and then you had a huge demand increase without the supply there to meet it because of supply chain issues, and that will cause inflation for long periods of time sometimes. And um it was kind of a lost cause. I did not realize how much inflation had been affecting candidates globally. Um, because the only politics I pay close attention to outside of the United States are British politics sometimes, Australian politics sometimes, South America if something gets interesting. Uh, I pay attention a little bit to Chinese politics. I read the South China Morning Post, but that's also propaganda from the government. So yeah, sort of thing. I didn't realize because this year 2024 has been a year of elections. Almost every I think every major democracy has had an elections of some sort this year. So we're in our voting era. We were voting as a people, as a humanity this year, and incumbent parties have really suffered because of inflation and prices being high and the post-COVID economics that have just been so difficult and so troublesome and so very, very hard. Um, she did the best she could. Honestly, yeah, I think she did the best she could. I wish she had been better in unscripted stuff. I wish there had been less word salad. She's definitely got the Hillary Clinton word salad thing. Um, so I wish that there was kind of less of that. Um, the far left has been complaining that the Democrat Party needs to quit being so right wing. Campaigning with the Cheneys probably wasn't a good idea. A lot of people who voted for Trump said the same thing. I joked at the time that if you had told any of us in 2005 that one day the Democratic nominee for president would be campaigning with Liz Cheney, we would have punched you in the dark days of the Iraq War protest. That just wouldn't be possible. And yet here we are. And and I get that. I mean, I was hopeful that it showed normal non-MAGA Republicans were breaking away from their party. The Republicans I remember, the people I worked with before I left the party 10 years ago, were leaving and at least for this one holding their nose. I think the sad part is Trump is fully in control of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, as we've known it, is gone. Which is funny because I finally blocked Brett Weinstein on Twitter because he is convinced that the Democratic Party is absolutely destroyed and has to be rebuilt into something functional. And I'm like, no, you just didn't like that people did not wanted you to use particular language for people or wanted you to use pronouns for trans people or wanted you to engage in the quote woke DEI identity politics stuff. That's not the end of a political party. That's a political opinion. That's maybe a social opinion. That's not the end of a political party. The reality is, over the last 8 years, Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd and the old Republican Party have been at odds and have been kind of fighting for control, even in congressional races and Senate races, with some mixed success. In 2022, MAGA candidates didn't go very far. In 2024, they went very far. But now, with this situation, Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd are fully in control of the Republican Party. This is who they are now. There's no hoping that normal Republicans will come back and save the day or kick out MAGA or kick out Donald Trump or anything like that. That is over. Incidentally, the one thing that I think Brett Weinstein is right about is the whole dialogue we've had around race, gender, sex, sexuality, all this sort of thing since 2014. That era has also come to a close. The great progressive wave that we've been riding since late Obama is now over. People want to return to normalcy. And let's face it, very little in the last 5 years has been normal. Between pandemics, insurrection, it's very little has been normal. inflation, prices, Walmart's not open 24 hours anymore. Good luck finding a 24-hour restaurant. Um, Everything's too expensive. Interest rates are out of control. It's been a hard last few years. And for better or for worse, people feel like Trump can get us back to normal and get rid of all that woke identity politics stuff, get inflation under control, get prices down, get cheaper gas, and make America great again. I think the tough part is I don't think they're going to get any of that, but I think they're going to get a whole lot of other things. Um, we're looking at least on immigration, mass deportations, closing of borders. We're looking at, people probably reporting other people for, their immigration status. Um, when it comes to government censorship in the media and all this type of thing, that's probably going to get stepped up a lot. Trump thinks that if anybody criticizes him, he doesn't like what they're saying, he should be able to shut them down or censor them. First Amendment, who heard of her? To bring this conversation full circle, that's why I had to get used to the fact that, for someone like me, I'm really probably already on the front line. And depending on how this goes and what it takes to get down to me finally, could end up, having to say what I'm going to say and do what I'm going to do and keep bringing you the truth, but realize that it may be putting my life in jeopardy, or at least my freedom at the minimum. Now, this is something journalists face all over the world, so, like them, in the grand tradition, I will face up to it bravely. There's been a lot of talk over the last couple days over how to prepare for what's coming. We're looking, with Project 2025, we're looking at bans on pornography, the end of no-fault divorce, of just a few things. For people that are transitioning, that are trans and transitioning, based upon Trump's recent speeches, all of that could be banned. He wants to have a law that defines what a man and a woman is legally. We've been here before in the 19th century. In the 19th century, they didn't have the medical technology to transition people, but there were what was called sumptuary laws. There were laws about fashion. Any woman, or even man, caught wearing too many pieces of the opposite gender's clothing could be arrested for indecency. That's where we're going. Personally speaking, as much as it's going to hurt me at a personal level, I hope the entire MAGA agenda gets implemented as fast as possible. I don't want Democrats to resist it. I don't want them to vote against it. I don't want them to vote for it. But I do not... I think people need to find out what it's like when these people are in charge. Because here's the reality. Around Donald Trump is not a Christian nationalist. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is. Lauren Boebert is. That is going to have an outsized effect on how these policies are created and how fast this stuff happens. And the reality is, with the evangelicals in charge who want to bring religion into schools, who want to get rid of interracial marriage, stop with that one for a second, want to get rid of interracial marriage, all this type of thing, it seems like we're headed for a complete rollback of every civil rights every civil rights progress made since at least World War II. And many of these may not necessarily be successful. But a few of them will be. they might get interracial marriage thrown out, and we go back to having miscegenation laws. As someone who's biracial, I'm in trouble. But and we could go, I mean, we can definitely, I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could go. A lot of things could get passed as part of other things, court cases striking things down. Here's the reality: with this much power, things are going to move very quickly. Very, very quickly. Frighteningly fast. And at this point, rather than trying to fight it or resist it, I think the best thing we can do is just survive it. People are talking about preparing, keeping your head down, not drawing attention to yourself. Now, for someone like me, that's very hard to do. I do this. I'm out there. There are 200 hours of content. There are 1,867 blog posts. I mean, I'm out there. So I can't hide as well as a lot of other people can. But the reality is, there's going to be a lot of tough, rough times ahead. The big story, obviously, is the Trump tariff regime. He wants to put universal tariffs on all imported goods. It will raise prices and cause a recession. There will probably be a recession next year. Honestly, people have been talking about, we're due for a recession anyway. But there'll probably be a recession next year, especially if even some of those tariffs go through. Because the reality is, whatever it is might be made in America, but its packaging isn't. Or the input to make that packaging isn't. And I've already had this conversation where, people are kind of like, well, I'll just encourage them to make things in America where they belong. Okay, one, we're in a global economy and have been for 30 years. Catch up. Two, in order for that to work, every single aspect of it must be made in this country. You know what we don't grow here? Rubber. The cost of tires, every belt in your car now costs 20% more. So when you go in to get a new serpentine belt, good luck. 4 set of new tires. My tires are already $110 per tire. Add on another 20%, you just added $45 onto the cost of tires. And that includes every single rubber door piece, all this type of thing. The cost of cars, even domestically produced cars, will go up because that rubber has to come from somewhere. Cheap t-shirts and all things like that, clothing and textiles. We haven't sewn clothes in this country at a textile industry since the late 70s, early 80s. That was one of the first things to go because it's high labor, high input, low margin, which basically means a lot of labor hours into making it for something you can't sell for very much. It's the same reason we have trouble making and building small cars in this country. That will kill the fast fashion industry. All those cheap clothes you buy on Shein and all this type of thing, gone. Cheap clothes at Walmart, gone. Everything at Walmart will go up 20-30%. And if you erroneously think that greedy corporations are going to just take it on the nose because they're good people and not immediately pass that on to consumers, they've already started. They're already stockpiling in anticipation of a new tariff regime. So if you voted for Trump to try to solve inflation and get prices down, I have bad news. Prices are already going in the wrong direction. Stock market's up though, which is nice. Yeah, it's tough times ahead. We are in for rough, hard, difficult times. As a business owner, I'm very worried at how sustainable all of this is going to be. As a consumer, I wonder how I can afford it. As an American, I feel bad for what it says about us what it says to children. I mean, and the thing with Trump is, and why he's kind of the Teflon Don, is no matter what happens to him, people will always counter. And so when I say he was convicted of 34 felonies, well, that's lawfare. They were going after him. All this, that prosecution was unfair. We have him on a recording in Georgia in 2020 trying to pressure the Secretary of State to find 11,000 votes. Well, he didn't mean that. This is how it goes. If he says it, he didn't mean it. If he did it, that's not what it really was. Or it was the other person's fault. We have been so, and authoritarians do this, we have been so gaslit and manipulated as a country that we have whole swaths of the country that will see the stuff that he does and not really understand the implications. And the thing about it is, I don't necessarily care what he does. And it is what it is, and I'm used to wealthy people using the legal system to get off. That's not new. I'm not new here. However, the calculus on that changes when you want to seek high office, when you want to lead the country, when you are responsible for the life, wealth, well-being, and health of 325 million people. The person in that job has to at least be 85% decent. That time has passed. But I will tell you, I'm not planning on resisting. I'm not planning on doing anything crazy. I will try to cover it as best as possible. I'm probably going to spend a lot of time writing books. I'm going to ride this out for as long as I can. Who knows where we might get to, and how this is all going to unfold. I've had to really get into a lot of acceptance about this stuff, my position, the situation, all this type of thing. If you are concerned about where the country is going and concerned with what has happened, I would encourage you to dial into your community. I've been on the phone talking to people, making plans to reach out regularly, all this type of thing. Having good, solid, quality contacts, especially with people you've known for some time, is going to be very important moving forward. So, we're at about 47 minutes, which is usually where I try to end the show. Don't worry, next week will be, hopefully have some other news to report. Not that there's not other things going on in the world, but I needed this. When I was really kind of in a lot of despair and whatnot on Friday, and I realized I had to do this show on Monday, and my first thought was, I should just cancel. I cannot possibly go and talk to the readership about this. And then as I was getting used to the fact that this job is now more dangerous than it was last week, I was like, no, if I'm going to meet this challenge, I'm going to meet it bravely and all this sort of thing. Today's a great day to start. So, thank you so much for watching. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal News Hour. We air every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to connect with me on social media, Instagram and Twitter, which I may not be on for very much longer due to present circumstances, is at Cameron Cowan. I'm at Cameron Journal on TikTok. There's usually an interview with a great artist this week. Unfortunately, I didn't get to video edit this weekend, so we don't have an interview this week, but that's okay. You just get me. And then on Facebook, it's Cameron L. Cowan, and I look forward to seeing you next week, and we're gonna get through this together. And don't forget to go to CameronJournal.com and sign up to receive the best of the Cameron Journal direct to your inbox. And if you love what I do and you want to support it in these troubling times, please sign up for a Cameron Journal Plus membership, which you can do when you put your email into the email box on CameronJournal.com. The more subscribers I have, the more I can keep trying to shut into the darkness until I can't. So, all right, CameronJournal.com. The other thing, when you join Cameron Journal Plus, you get to join my Discord, where I hang out, talk to people. It's fun times. Yeah, so, CameronJournal.com. I will see you all next week. Have a good night. Godspeed, everyone.